Welcome to Stonewatch. This is my open spoiler discussion for Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett Chapter 5. And if you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button and click on that bell so you get notified for future videos. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Holy shnikes, man. This episode was just so damn awesome. Now, we had a runtime of 52 minutes this week, and just as I predicted, Bryce Dallas Howard was the director for this chapter, which she just hit this thing out of the park, and the title of it says it all: The Return of the Mandalorian. So Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, is back. And ever since this episode dropped, I've been seeing it and hearing about it all over the internet. This is the best episode ever because the Mando is in it. How bad is it where like the main character is not in his own show? I guess there's a little bit into that if you really want to look at it that way. But however, you have to keep in mind that the Book of Boba, Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and whatever show they decide that they're going to replace the Rangers of the New Republic with are all part of the Mandoverse, right? So them going off on a little tangent talking about another character which is part of the shared universe. Now, I know this is Star Wars and it's all supposed to be a shared universe, but at least with these shows on Disney Plus, it's run by Favreau and Filoni, and all of these shows are going to be combined into one main story that's going to accumulate into like some big, huge event, as they were describing it when they were like launching this stuff. So I don't know what that's going to entail, but because of that reason, I don't mind them going off on a little tangent, filling us in what's going on with the Mandalorian. I mean, I kind of think they almost have to, right? Because the last time we saw him in Season 2, he was waving goodbye to Grogu, leaving with Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi. So we were all wondering whether or not we were going to see the little guy again, and, you know, he won the Darksaber from Moff Gideon. Will he get another ship after the Razor Crest was being destroyed? And what's going to happen when the armorer and who's ever left in his cult-like type thing find out he took his helmet off twice? How are they going to react to that, right? So we had so many unanswered questions that we needed to know about the Mandalorian before we could actually move forward with his story. So I'm kind of glad they did it this way, even though I've been seeing people saying this was more like Mandalorian's Season 3, Chapter 1 than it was another chapter in the Book of Boba Fett. I can kind of see that argument, but at the same time, these are all part of the same universe, so it kind of makes a lot of sense. And now we know all this information, and when we do see Mandalorian Season 3, whenever the hell that drops, we won't really have to go over all this stuff again. We'll maybe touch on it again, maybe go into depth in some parts of it even more once Season 3 drops, but we're not going to have to do all the stuff that we saw in this last episode again. Now for a quick rundown what we saw in this episode. Now they wasted no time with this thing. As soon as after the title sequence was over with, we were right in the thick of it. I mean, boom, there's a Mandalorian. He's right there and he's at some kind of meat packing plant and he's looking for a bounty, right? Which I thought that was kind of interesting. He went straight back to work. Now the only thing is, how's he being a bounty hunter without a spaceship to haul his stuff, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting that he was like, right back to work. So I go, well, maybe he's got a ship parked outside and we just don't know it yet, right? Well, that's not the case. Now, when he does confront this guy and say, hey, I'm here to look for so-and-so, I don't remember the character's name. And he goes, well, if I see him, I'll let you know. And he's like, well, I see him now. And he like puts down that bounty puck and he turns it on and it's that guy. And he's like, that's not me. It looks nothing like me. I mean, they all say that when he does that kind of a thing. And he goes, well, what about if we need to negotiate? And all his buddies started kind of like moving in. And like Mandalorian's like, hey man, I got no beef with you guys, so you can leave right now. This is your final warning. But then like the main guy's like, hey, they're not going to go anywhere. I think you're just kind of SOL. And he's like, well, and he says the line, right?
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Now, before he could actually pull his blaster off, some guy came off to his right and bit him on the hand. I thought that was kind of funny, but then he just whipped out the Darksaber and was like, oh man, already? Holy smokes. And he just started taking dudes out and wrecking shop. But another thing that we saw in him doing this is he does not know how to use that thing whatsoever. Now, he's fairly adept in combat, but he has no idea how to fight with a lightsaber type weapon. And he proves it in this fight because I had to actually rewind this thing like 3 times when I first saw this episode, and I'm like, did he do what I think he did? And he did. He burnt his own leg with the Darksaber because he doesn't know how to handle this thing, right? Thought that was kind of strange that he was not able to actually use this weapon. But after he gets his bounty, first he chops the dude right in half, and I was like, oh my god, man, that is so brutal. And then he chopped the dude's head off, and I was like, holy smokes. I mean, this is Disney Plus, man. What granted, there was no blood or nothing, but I was like, man, that's pretty damn brutal, right? And when he comes out and he sees all the other workers, they're all standing there. I thought he's going to have to fight his way through with all of them guys. But he's like, look, your boss is dead. There's a bunch of money back there in the office. Go help yourself. I don't want it. It's all you. Have a good day. And they let him go and he leaves. Now he's like limping as he's walking through this city. Now I thought this was kind of interesting because then we realized that he's on like some kind of a ring world. Now my one friend Ken, what's up man, told me that this was like straight out of Halo. So obviously that's where they got the idea from. But I wonder, what is this place called? Where is this place at? How far away is this place from like everything else, right? Because we've never seen this before in Star Wars. Never even heard about something like this before in Star Wars. So I'd like to know what the name of this place is, because they didn't say, and I kind of like to know where this place is at. But maybe this ring world will end up being a popular location for the Mandoverse, and we'll see it again, and they'll actually tell us where we're at, right? So I guess we have to wait and see. Now, as he's limping through the city with this burnt leg, he walks up to this turbolift and goes to get on. Now, when he does, this alien joins him. I thought this was a pretty damn funny scene, to be quite honest with you. And I thought they might start talking, but they didn't. Now he walks into this like restaurant-like type place, and it kind of looks like it's something like similar to the sanctuary they got over on Tatooine. He walks up to this table full of aliens and an Ishi-tip guildmaster and delivers his bounty for his reward and apparently information on how to find the other Mandalorians that we saw that was on Navarro. After getting this information, he heads down to the lower levels where he finds a trail that can only be found if you're wearing a Mandalorian helmet that can see in different light spectrums, right? I thought this was kind of cool. And when he follows the trail, sure enough, we find that the armor and Paz Vizsla survived the events that happened over on Navarro, which I thought was pretty damn cool, because I looked in that pile of armor for Paz Vizsla and I could not see his stuff in there anywhere. And I looked. I mean, granted, it still could have been in there and I just couldn't see it, but I think for something like that, they would have definitely put his out in the open when you would have seen it and gone, oh my God, he didn't make it. But apparently he did. Now they attend to his Darksaber wound, but when the armorer asked him, how did you receive this wound? And he pulled out the Darksaber to hand over to her. I mean, man, even though that they're wearing a helmet and you can't see their facial expressions, somehow or another, they get it to where you almost get it to where you can see the facial expressions that's on their faces. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because as soon as he pulled out the Darksaber and it was right there in front of Vizsla's face, you could almost see like he had this thing like, oh my God, there it is. You know, because this is part of his family heritage, right? So without able to see his face, you can almost feel the facial expression that he had on his face underneath the helmet. I think that's one of the coolest things about these shows, right? This one and The Mandalorian. They're able to show you that emotion without actually showing you that emotion. You know what I'm saying? Here's a brief history for the Darksaber. The Darksaber was an ancient and unique black-bladed lightsaber created by Paz Vizsla, the first Mandalorian ever inducted into the Jedi Order, prior to 1032 BBY. That's before the Battle of Yavin. The weapon was kept in the Jedi Temple after Vizsla's passing, but members of House Vizsla stole the saber in a conflict with the Jedi during the fall of the Old Republic. The Darksaber was then passed down generation to generation by the ancestors of Vizsla, who held on to the weapon even after the pacifist ideals of the new Mandalorians replaced the warrior ways of Mandalore. By 21 BBY, the Darksaber was in possession of Vizsla, the leader of the Death Watch and House Vizsla, during the Clone Wars. He used the blade during his conflicts with the new Mandalorians, including his successful takeover of Mandalore.
That woman tarnishes the very name Mandalorian.
After the coup, the renegade Sith Lord Maul challenged and killed Vizsla in a duel and took the Darksaber as his own, becoming the leader of the Death Watch. Maul would go on to use the Darksaber in several battles, such as the Battle of Ormantle, the assault on Vizsla Keep 09, and the Second Battle of Dathomir. During the Imperial era, the Mandalorian weapons expert and rebel Sabine Wren retrieved the Darksaber from the Night Sister lair on Dathomir. At the urging of the Mandalorian protector Finn Rao and her fellow Spectres, Sabine agreed to undergo training with the Darksaber under the tutelage of Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus. Later, Sabine brought the Darksaber with her and her rebel companions during the mission to Crow Nest to seek her family's support for the rebellion. Sabine became the rightful wielder of the Darksaber after defeating Imperial Viceroy Gar Saxon in a duel. After rescuing her father from Imperial custody and destroying the super weapon she built, all an Imperial cadet, Sabine offered the Darksaber over to Lady Bo-Katan Bo-Katan Kryze, the sister of the former Duchess, whom she deemed to be the rightful person to lead the Mandalorians against the Empire. Bo-Katan was reluctant to accept the mantle of leader, but with the support of the other clans, agreed and accepted the Darksaber. Now, we were wondering ever since the end of Mandalorian Season 2 why Bo-Katan would not accept a Darksaber again like she did from Sabine. But we find out from the armorer that it had to be won in battle in order to actually rule Mandalore. And she just accepted it without that. And by doing so, according to their legend, it goes along with the Darksaber. It leads their civilization into ruins. And we see that take place in the flashback of the Night of 1,000 Tears with all them TIE bombers just like bombing everything on Mandalore out of existence. And then we see the probe droids and the K2SO type droids just killing and everything in their path. Then when the armorer asked Din Djarin where he got the Beskar spear from, he goes on to say he got it from the Jedi, and that's what he used to defeat Moff Gideon with. And she said it also can pierce Beskar armor, so it puts all Mandalorians at risk. Mandalorian steel is only meant to make armor, not weapons. So what she reforges into, he said, how about something for a foundling? A specific foundling. She said, but he's no longer in your care. But he says, I wish to see him again. We all want to see Grogu again, right? I mean, but proceeds to melt down the spear, and she makes it into what it looks like, and we didn't see the actual finished product, but what it looks like, she was making like rings for something like for chainmail. So I think, and this is my theory, that I think it's going to be like a chainmail vest, something to slip over his robes. And there was like some people speculating that this is what saves Grogu when Kylo Ren attacks Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy in the sequels. After the armor wraps up the chainmail armor inside like a cloth or a bag or something like that in the origami form of Grogu's head, we see in the next scene the armor and Din Djarin training with the Darksaber. Now he says to her it gets heavier with every swing. She says because you're fighting against the blade. So what's up with that? But then again, I don't know, maybe it's something to be like you have the Force and it kind of augments your strength. But then when Kanan was teaching Sabine Wren and Star Wars Rebels how to use it, he basically told her the same thing. You're fighting the blade. You need to make it an extension of your body and focus all your energy into the crystal so it actually works with you. So maybe there's something to that. But then Paz Vizsla steps and say, well, maybe he shouldn't be the one to have it.
It was forged by my ancestor, founder of House Vizsla.
Do you agree to this duel, Din Djarin?
I do.
And you got to give Din Djarin credit. I mean, he could have easily said, nah, man, that's okay. I don't want to fight you, man. We're friends. We're buddies and everything. He's like, all right, I'll take you on. Now, the armor just pretty much says, like, okay. And she steps out of the way and she walks off. And then Paz Vizsla and Din Djarin start going at it. Now, at first, when Din was starting to use the Darksaber, it looks like he had the upper hand. But Vizsla pretty much turns the tides and gets a hold of the Darksaber. But then Din Djarin was able to subdue him with the vibro knife. Then the armorer came back and asked Vizsla if he ever took his helmet off, and he said no. And then she asked the same question to Din Djarin, have you ever taken your helmet off? And he didn't say anything right away, and you could almost feel the tension in the air because he didn't answer her right away. She asked him again, did you ever take your helmet off? Could have easily lied, but he didn't. He said yes. He didn't see how many times he took it off, but he just said, yeah, I took it off. She's like, you're no longer a Mandalorian. He goes, well, how am I going to make it back? He's got to go to the mines of Mandalore underneath the water. So probably where we're going to go in Mandalorian Season 3 so he can restore himself as a Mandalorian. But at that point, the people he considered his family are kicking him out. You know what I mean? And then we find ourselves going on some like commercial transport. And on his way to board the transport, we have a robot that pretty much looks like the droid from the Star Tours over in Disney World and Disneyland saying, hey, you can't take those weapons on the ship. You know, you're going to have to give them off. He's like, I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are my religion. And he's like, well, you just can't. I mean, we could bring it up to like the authorities and stuff like that, but you're going to have to wait for the next available ship in the process. He's like, all right. He just pretty much empties all his weapons into this case. Now, we were all freaking out when this thing was happening. When he took out the Darksaber, he's about ready to put it in the case. We're like, oh, wait, don't do that, man. That's just crazy. You know, it's not going to be there when you come back. Now, while en route to Tatooine, he's just sitting there in his seat, and you can see he's just kind of reflecting on what's going on. And all of a sudden, this Rodian kid in front of him like pops up and starts staring at him and like waving and everything, making him think about Grogu. Now, after we arrive on Tatooine, we find ourselves in Mos Eisley. The camera cuts over to a BD droid that we see in Jedi Fallen Order. Now, some people are speculating this is the exact same BD droid that we saw in that game, but somehow he's come in possession of Peli Moto. Now she's like searching down what we think is like a womp rat. Now this thing was pretty damn big for a womp rat, and when she goes around and she tries to get the droids to go do it, and they're like, no, I ain't doing it. She's like, you're a droid, you're supposed to do what you're told. Now, when she goes over to herself, the thing grabs a hold of her like it's going to eat her. So I'm like, holy smokes, man. I mean, how big is this thing? Well, then the Mandalorian shows up in the nick of time to shoot it. And she's like, whoa, what an entrance. She's like, what are you doing here? Like, you sent me a message. She's like, what message? You know, the message about the Razor Crest-like ship that you have? She's like, oh, yeah. And she takes him over to this dust-covered tarp. Now, when she pulls the tarp off, it reveals it's an N1 Naboo starfighter. Now, at first, he's like, this, I don't care what this thing is. It's a hunk of junk. It's all in pieces. Now, she talks him into letting her finish putting it together before he makes a final decision. And then she Tom Sawyers him in to help putting this thing back together. Now, I thought this was actually pretty cool as he was putting it back together, having the BD droid help him put lights on it.
Dated a jowl for a while. They're quite furry. Very furry.
Now, I thought this joke was kind of funny, but they kept on playing with this joke, and it got a little old kind of fast, but it was kind of funny. After finished putting this thing together, it's time to take it for a test flight. Now, when he goes to take it for a test flight, he goes, it's running kind of rough. She says, that's because it's not a gunship, it's a starfighter, and you need to fly it like one. Thing we know, he's flying through the pod race course that we saw in the Phantom Menace from episode 1. I thought that was pretty damn cool. Even down to the part when he got to Beggar's Canyon and there was that ramp with the gate that Anakin busted through. It still had to bust a gate, so I thought that was a pretty neat detail. I mean, this was pretty cool. And then he finally takes it up to space, and he pretty much laps the Star Cruiser. And then as he speeds past the cruiser, and he's doing like the spinning trick that Anakin was doing, he gets pulled over by a couple X-Wings. Now, I thought this was kind of weird, because one, that them actually being there at that point in time was kind of weird. And then like pulling them over like they're traffic cops. I mean, they're X-Wing starfighter pilots. They're not... I mean, I always thought that was kind of weird. They treat them like they're cops, but they're not. But whatever. But it's Captain Tevye and a new lieutenant being played by Max Lloyd Jones. Now, this is the same actor that was the body double for Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian Season 2, along with Mark Hamill. Thought it was pretty cool that they brought him back in here. Now, after getting away from the X-Wing police force, Mando brings the ship to land in Pelimoto's hangar bay. Now, after he pops the hatch, he's like, well, what'd you think?
Wizard.
Now, this was a pretty damn cool callback to Anakin from Episode 1 and Phantom Menace. The next thing you know, we hear Fennec Shan, and we see Fennec Shan up there in the rafters, and she jumps down and says, hey, are you looking for work? He's like, what's the bounty? He's like, it's not bounty. We need muscle. Boba? She's like, yeah, he'd appreciate it. He goes, throws it back to money. He goes, hey, tell him it's on the house. But first,
I gotta pay a visit to a little friend.
now, everybody online is speculating that we're going to possibly see Grogu next week after this setup. I mean, they kind of almost have to at this point, right? I mean, I want to see what he's going to get from the armor. I want to see how cute he looks in it, right? I mean, it's going to be the hottest toy next Christmas, so I want to see it as soon as possible, right? I mean, you think they're going to wait to save that for when Mando Season 3 drops? Probably not. I mean, this is Disney, right? So they're going to probably want to get that out there so everybody be like, oh, how cute, you know what I mean? But if we do see Grogu next week, he's with Luke Skywalker. So is it possible we're going to see Luke Skywalker again so soon in this Disney Plus Star Wars live action shows? Are we going to see him already this fast? Now, I was speculating earlier on at work, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'll actually introduce us to a new character that also is going to Luke's new Jedi Academy. Because in The Force Awakens, he said he had several students. I still want to know who them several other students are, even the ones that Kylo Ren ends up killing before the events of The Force Awakens. I want to know who all those were. I am a huge fan of the OEU Jedi Academy books, and we met all new Jedi and that stuff like that, and throughout the new Jedi Order and stuff like that, we had all these new Jedi. I love that part of the old EU, and I kind of feel ripped off from like the new sequel trilogy because they pretty much killed all the Jedis off again before we even got to meet them. So I think this would be a good opportunity for us to meet somebody from the new sequel trilogy Jedi, but maybe that's just me. You know, even though this episode answered a lot of questions that I thought that we all had about Mando going from season 1 into season 3, I think that answered a lot of those questions. They go about the Darksaber, did he go back to work, how's he going to get, what he's going to do about not having the Razor Crest, and how is he handling it not being around Grogu. And we pretty much got all them answers in this episode. And how would the armor and them handle it when they find out that he took his helmet off? Well, they kicked him out for it, right? So now he has to like try to make his way back in or make sense of like everything that's going on. So, but what I want to know is what made him go to that ring world, right? I mean, because when we last saw him, he was with Bo-Katan and all them on that cruiser watching Grogu leave with Luke Skywalker, and it ended right there. So what happened right after that? Are they going to tell us that in Mandalorian Season 3? in between that moment there and before he walks into that meat locker and on the ring world, right? Are we going to find out what happened in that time frame and how much time passed in that period, right? I mean, I was thinking about that earlier on today. I'm like, I want to know that. And seeing how they don't have like expanded universe novels for the Mandalorian, are they going to address that on screen? Or do we just have to, or what? Let me always think about that in the comments down below. I was thinking about that earlier on today. I'm going, we're going to find that out, because I'd like to know what made him go to the ring world to find to even think that's where he could get information for the other Mandalorians, right? I mean, what made him go there? He had to get that information from somewhere. Are we going to see where he got that information from, right? Is this the only time he actually whipped out the Darksaber to kind of like kick some ass? Now, we are now down to the final 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. Now, next week, Chapter 6 is supposed to be written and directed by Dave Filoni. I cannot wait to see what this man brings to this series. I mean, now I know that some people were not happy with his Chapter 5 episode from Mandalorian Season 1, but everybody loved his chapter, The Jedi, in Mando Season 2. So, I mean, he's getting better, man. I mean, this guy knows how to tell stories, and this man knows Star Wars. So I cannot wait to see what he brings into this. I was just thinking about this. How cool would it be if he brought Ahsoka Tano into this series?
Surrender. Or face the consequences.
I mean, this is supposed to be part of a shared universe like type thing, and what if she's the one who actually gives Din Djarin some lightsaber training, right? I mean, I know some people were speculating that maybe Luke would give him some lightsaber training, but maybe he's like busy with other students and he passes it off. Maybe we find out that Ahsoka did know Luke Skywalker, and this is how we find that out. How cool would that be? Again, I am wildly speculating right now. The possibilities next week are almost endless on what we could possibly see, other than Boba actually confronting the Pike, which I think they're going to save that for episode 7. This thing's all going to come in one big, huge finale in episode 7. But what can we possibly see next week? So I don't know, man. Did you watch the 5th chapter of the Book of Boba Fett? Let me know in the comments down below. Where does this one rank with you with all the other episodes we've gotten so far? Let me know in the comments down below. And do you think this fit better to be a chapter for the Book of Boba Fett, or was better to be a chapter for Mandalorian Season 3? Let you know what you think about that in the comments down below. I mean, I've been seeing what people are saying online as far as that goes, but let me know what you think in the comments down below.